Hello, Team 4. Thank you for your presentation. And Daniel, thank you for that video that you incorporated, by the way. It was a much-needed laugh at this late hour on a Tuesday. I wanted to make a few comments to you guys about your presentation of this chapter. One, it's sort of in relation to your own discussion questions, which is just this question that was in my mind the whole time reading the chapter and in hearing your presentation. Specifically, do educators get any training at all in how to specifically find and locate data themselves when they see a problem for which they think data might even be useful, rather than simply receiving it and then interpreting it based on state evaluations or whatever, what have you? Because as the last team was talking about, as far as the use of research, that's something that seems really important, and that's something I'm actually not sure if it's been addressed. The distinction between being able to find data that's useful to you versus simply interpret data that's given to you. A couple other things. One is, with all of the controversy over education schools and the high quality, or lack thereof, in some cases, in the U.S., I'm wondering whether education schools, and specifically credentialing programs, actually take the NAESP recommendations, the 6 performance standards that you all mentioned, into account when they train principals, because those seem like they're very specific, very concrete, and if in fact those are recommendations nationwide for things principals need to know how to do, does that actually translate into their training, is what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if anybody, whether on the team or otherwise, knows the answer to that. Also, I'm wondering if, I really appreciated Candy's presentation, very clear and helpful, about both the relation to Jesuit traditions of these concepts, particularly of cognitive dissonance and self-efficacy. That was really illuminating to me, and it helped a lot with my understanding of the chapter. But I'd love to hear a little bit more when you all say on slide 10, when approaching data collection, interpretation, and application, it is essential that cognitive dissonance and self-efficacy is essential. I'm wondering if you could describe what you feel they're essential to, and if you could just comment on that a bit more, beyond what the concepts themselves are. Like, how did those actually get addressed a little more? One of the things that was mentioned was the idea that the opportunity to talk about data findings beyond just receiving data and actually interpret it together as a group is really critical. That seemed like it really resonated with me, because it might mitigate what some of the people in the studies that Daniel presented were saying, was this this feeling of being intimidated by not knowing whether they were going to interpret the data incorrectly as one individual, and not wanting to be that one go-to individual. Well, maybe if there wasn't the sense that somebody needed to become just the one person in their school to go to for data, and instead there was discussion where any piece of data that gets interpreted for classroom use or other school leadership purposes was seen by at least a few people, that might help people feel better, that they are one set of eyes among many that are doing the interpreting. So I'm wondering if Candy in particular would agree with that, or if the team in general would agree with that, that that's one way to deal with the issues of cognitive dissonance and the need for consonance, I think is the word. Two more things. One is when they mentioned, I think Daniel mentioned gut-level decisions, that leaders often end up going back to just the gut-level decisions when they feel unsure about how to use data. I find that when I make gut-level decisions, especially related to professional decision-making, it is often after a pretty careful consideration of pros and cons. And I wonder if in cases where people have been exposed to the use of data and some significant training in the use of data, does that gut-level decision become more informed? Does it become something that the principals or other school leaders can trust more readily because they've been trained? And lastly, to your point and your question about transformative leaders versus transformational leaders, I've heard even some anecdotal evidence from within the class, and certainly from Daniel when he was talking, that unless teachers sense that their principals are actually transformative leaders that value dialogue and won't see it as a kind of attempt to usurp leadership, that all the data in the world won't make a difference in the actual practice. And I wonder what anyone else has to say about that. Sorry guys, this is going really long. It's getting pretty late. I know this is like a million comments and questions. Feel free to just pick and choose what's easiest to comment on, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.